Thank you, Lord, for bringing us together for these meetings today. Just be with us, Lord, and give us wisdom and help us to make good decisions, Lord, as we go through this day. Be with us as we fellowship amongst each other. We just love you and praise you, Lord. Amen.
Amen. I'm not supposed to take one now.
Meredith Bailey. Here. Bill Bill Englund.
Here.
Bill John Baker.
Here.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Julia Coates. Here. Bradley Cobb.
On.
Joe Crittenden.
Here.
Jody Fishinghawk.
Here.
Janelle Fulbright. Here. Garvin. Chuck Hoskins Jr.
Here.
China Glory Jordan.
Present.
Curtis Snell.
Here.
Chris Stokes. David Jordan. Kara Cowan Watts.
The quorum. First item on the agenda is a resolution adopting the principles for districting. Ms. Cowan Watts.
We're just going to get to it right now.
Melody. Anybody here? Somebody want to table that?
I move that it be tabled.
Move to table. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Item 2 is discussion and possible action of a redistricting map. I think, Ms. Fishinghawk, you've been working on this like a little worker bee.
What I did is I went over and talked to David Justice, and on the western border, I passed out a map and a spreadsheet, and where some of our zip codes, like inside and outside of the boundary, he was able to use 911 and go into them zip codes and place whether they was inside or outside, whether he's one of our counselors or whether that person belonged to Julie or Jack. And that's what I'm passing around right now. And these at least give us more accurate numbers to work with, which is what I'm wanting, because we was all asking where these numbers come from.
Mr. Baker?
Yes. We're short.
I think Don Garvin's already got one, and Bill John had said already.
Yeah, probably.
He probably took another set.
Yes, he probably did.
And like where Brad's district 74003 shows only like 10% of that zip code lies inside the boundaries, when you take 911 to it, you actually find out 90% of the people do reside in that little district. And I was wanting everybody to look at it. The 4 that I've got written down below are the ones that do not have 911, have no good geocoding, is the 4 that I've wrote in towards the bottom left. Here's another set.
I don't have a map.
Here's the set.
Here's a set.
Bill, do you have a complete set? You have a complete set?
There's 3 sheets.
I don't have the third sheet.
Can Counselor Fishinghawk back up and talk about what you were saying earlier now that you have it?
The yellow sheet with the 14 county, with the light, the dark on there, shows which zip codes are border zip codes that fall inside and outside the jurisdictional boundaries. Some of them have good 911 on that western side, has good 911. So I asked David Justice if he could place the ones that had good 911 on the western side, and he said yes he could, the ones that had 911. So the spreadsheet tells you if they have good geocoding or not. So if there's a yes there, they have 911. If there's a no on the spreadsheet, they do not have it. Using 911, he was able to go in and place them inside the jurisdictional boundaries or outside the jurisdictional boundaries, which makes them at large. That's what that spreadsheet is. The map that I handed out, I just went through there and penciled the numbers off that spreadsheet in there so it would be easier to look at. The 4 numbers, the 4 zip codes that are written on the bottom left-hand side do not have 911. And they're on that western border, which is Wagner, Mays, and 2 small ones in Muskogee. So at least this gives us better numbers to work with. Or more accurate.
I wonder, is Mr. Justice, will he speak to the map as well?
David, would you mind coming forward? Like a big shot.
I want to make sure I have a handle on distinguishing this map from the previous ones we've seen. The previous ones, in fact, use a proportionment, a method of estimating, if you will, populations in certain geographic areas where we have a mix across the nation of 911 addresses and non-911 addresses. That's one distinguishing feature, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And just from your standpoint as somebody who crunches these numbers all the time, what's the more accurate approach? We have the other approaches that, again, use a proportionate method, but this one mixes some 911 addresses where we have them and doesn't use them or they're not available, obviously. Which is the more accurate way to approach this, in your opinion?
Well, in the past, the previous council decided to use, how to say this, what they did for one, they had to do it for all. So that was the reason for looking at the two methods. We looked at using proportionment, which is the land-based method. So if 60% of a zip code is in one county, 40% of it is in another county, that's how we split the numbers up, no matter where those residents resided. The other method was just looking at the zip code boundary as a whole and assigning a specific number to it or whatever the registration database said was in that zip code. If we looked at this method and combining two, I think for along the boundary zip codes you would get a little bit more accurate numbers by combining the 911. Because out of the 23 zip codes, I believe it was, there were 6 zip codes that we determined, or that we made a determination of, we weren't sure, basically. The others, I was able to make a determination of, 50 out of the 100 were in and the other 50 were out, or whatever it happened to be. So I would say that combining the 911, especially for the border zips, is probably a more accurate method of doing it.
Because using the proportionate method, just using District 8 as an example, this really exposes the inherent problem in trying to make estimates based on land mass.
Yes.
Where here in District 8 we see a significant concentration of people in a small area, and that appears to be true of a lot of our border districts. So, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Dr. Cobb?
I just want to be clear. District 8, Washington County, is just a glaring example of what the discussion just was, is that the majority of that 74003 zip code is actually in Osage County.
Yes, sir.
But 90% of the people in that zip code actually live in Washington County, in Bartlesville. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So if you proportion, you're not really counting. You're missing that 90% because you're just assuming that you're splitting it. Is that what I'm assuming correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Gordon?
Mr. Justice, in your opinion, have you used reasonable methods to determine the number of members on the bordering counties that are inside the district versus those that are outside?
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
You understand that this might go to court sometime?
Yes.
And you're probably going to be the witness.
Unfortunately.
So my question is, do you feel comfortable in being able to say, using this method, how many of these members that lay along the bordering portions of our 14 counties, using 911, you're able to say with reasonable certainty that these people live inside the boundaries or outside the boundaries?
Yes.
And using these numbers, would we then have a pretty accurate picture of the number of members living within our 14 counties?
I believe so.
Okay.
Baker?
Yes. Technology is such that we need to use it when at all possible. And I'm assuming that this was 911. You can pretty well pinpoint in the ones that have it. What would you suggest on the ones that don't?
I would suggest using the zip codes. That's the best information that we have for
But
those
do you
areas.
proportion those or on the ones that don't have 911?
No, I would just use the zip code boundaries itself. no matter if the zip code boundary itself was in 4 different counties, that's what I would use,
And how would you assign it?
with whatever the registration number says is in that zip code.
So let me find an example. Okay. Wagner County says there's 2,620, and you would propose using all of those as being in boundary?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got no way of proving otherwise.
Even though that particular zip code, 67, the majority of it lies outside the Cherokee Nation. And the city of Wagner lies outside the Cherokee Nation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Hoskins, did you have your hand up again?
I did. A couple of questions. One, to the extent it's not clear, is this the most accurate method, in your opinion, for determining population across Cherokee Nation? The method you use to get to Councilor Fishing Hawk's map?
Using 911 along the boundary and using zip code for the rest? Yeah, I believe it is.
And to Councilor Bill John Baker's question, why would you not use a proportionate method for those areas where there are not 911 addresses?
Just because of the inherent flaw in using the land-based method. You know, we've already proven it for the 74003 zip code in Bartlesville. That's a big assumption, you know, saying that because 10% of that zip code is in our jurisdictional area, that we're only going to give credit for 10% of those numbers. And we're making that same assumption for other zip codes that we just don't know, and I think that's a big assumption.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Dr. Cobb?
My question was answered. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Buzzard?
I want to bring up a point, and I'm not sure it's a valid point, but I want to bring it up and bring it for the council anyway, for the committee. We're talking about people living out of jurisdictional boundaries. Okay, I live over on the Arkansas-Missouri border. I have a lot of Cherokees that live over in Anderson, Missouri, Norwell, Missouri, Southwest City, Missouri. So we're going to have to come to some conclusion to where we're going to have to be fair to each council member sitting on this council. Now, Cherokee Nation is a sovereign government. We have jurisdictional boundaries. So where do we go from there? I want to put this out on the table for discussion. Simply because I live along the Arkansas-Missouri borders. And I have a lot of people that are Cherokees that live just over the border, 5 miles, 2 miles, or 1 mile. So that brings up a question that I want to put on the table here. Thank you.
Dr. Cobb?
Am I, Councilor Buzzard, am I assuming, I want to try to figure out what path we're going down here. If we're using, are you asking if we're using zip codes that are in different counties, but they're still in the state of Oklahoma? Are you asking then, just because it's a different state, why are we not doing the same thing? Is that kind of where we're going with this?
Well, to answer the question, my point is if we're looking at the Cherokee Nation jurisdictional boundaries, which is 14 counties, and then we're going to overlap to the people around the boundaries, you know, where are we going to overlap to? Just to the counties in Oklahoma? Or are we going to overlap to the counties that join by other states where we have other Cherokees or in other states?
That answers my question.
So I guess what I think we need to look at is certainly the jurisdictional boundaries of the Cherokee Nation.
Mr. Baker?
Yeah, and I agree with Harley. I mean, and I agree that the proportionment in Bartlesville shot the proportionment out of the water. However, logically, the city of Wagner has the biggest population of Wagner County, short of Broken Arrow. And so, you know, around the lake, the portion that's actually in, I mean, I guess we could give them 2,620 population. But if they were wanting car tags, how would we determine then, since there's not 911?
sorry, are you asking me the question?
Yeah, you or Todd or somebody. In other words, let's say I live in Wagner proper, and I want a Cherokee car tag, and I'm Cherokee. Would we just give it to them because they were in that zip code?
No, for a Cherokee car tag, most of the time for residents in Wagner County, because of the lack of 911 road system, we have to get driving directions, and just off the top of my head, I'm going to say 80 or 90% of the people that we do address verifications for end up in the Wagner area, end up living inside of our jurisdictional area, usually right along the lake. I know in the past, zip codes were just determined for the same process. If a certain percentage of a zip code was determined to be inside of our jurisdictional area, those council members were given credit for that entire number.
Okay. And I guess same way in McIntosh County. I mean, I'm sitting here seeing clusters outside the line, and I just wonder how you're getting those.
Well, when we do the geocoding method, are you talking about the pinpoints that are all along, like in Wagner?
Yeah, Wagner, or in like 74426. It's out. The clusters are outside the boundaries.
When we do the geocoding, if there is no 911, it falls back to the city or the county seat itself.
Okay.
So everybody that lives in the, if you notice in Wagner County, we actually have good 911. We're assuming it's because of the Tulsa Broken Arrow area along the western side of that Wagner County. You actually get a pretty good disbursement of our Cherokee citizens. Over on the eastern side of it, though, you don't get that disbursement. They're all kind of clumped right inside of Wagner County, or Wagner proper itself.
Yes.
That's the county seat. That's where it puts everybody back that it can't find.
Okay.
Is in that area. You get that same kind of disbursement in Adair County. I think there's like 10,000 Cherokee citizens, according to geocoding, that live inside the city limits of Stillwell.
Well, and this is the absolute best set of numbers that you all can come up with.
Right now.
I move that we accept this map as our benchmark.
Have a motion to accept this map as a benchmark. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved in second. And further discussion. Jack Becker.
The only discussion I would have was along the borders, the state borders. The zip codes do not overlap out of state, and the Constitution says that they shall establish representative districts which shall be within the boundaries of the Cherokee Nation. So those people that live outside the boundaries, outside the state, they're in a different zip code. Yes. And so I don't see how they could be included within the Cherokee Nation boundaries at all.
Do you have a comment, David?
We've taken pretty extensive steps to make sure that we're not including anybody outside of our jurisdictional area, except for the boundary zip codes along the western boundary that are just unsure.
Clear? Jack?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Buell?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. David, I have a question here. I just want to clear up my mind here. The numbers that are written in blue around the District 7 and District 8, was these numbers generated by you? Or?
Yes.
And does these numbers here, do they reflect citizens that live in that zip code but outside of the boundary?
No, those are numbers of citizens that live in that zip code but also in our jurisdictional area.
So these numbers here are inside the jurisdiction?
Yes.
Inside the 14 counties? Okay. Inside and outside?
No, just inside.
That's what I'm trying to clear up, to make sure that we're not including numbers outside of the jurisdiction.
No, we're not. No, those numbers only reflect what are in our jurisdiction.
That's all I have.
Jody?
Oh, I was going to ask you. I was just going to comment on what Bill John said about trying to figure out for tags. I mean, I guess if you wanted to carry this one step further, you could probably go to the registration and find out if they had got a tag or not, if you wanted to go that far. Could you?
I'm guessing we could we?
Run their name through registration and see if it pops up on a car tag?
Yes, you could. The only dilemma that you have is that you're not getting accurate reflection of the citizens that live in the jurisdiction. You're getting accurate reflection of those citizens that have vehicles and registered with them. So your count would be a little less as far as kids and other adults that may live in the household but not be counted on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Besser?
No, I think you all got my question.
Okay. Ms. Calvin Watts?
Thank you. I apologize. I had folks catch me outside. So I'm concerned about what the actual motion means. How is it different than the actual count that we've already said that the district court said was what we should use on data?
The only difference between what we had previously looked at by looking at just zip code boundaries and the registration number associated with that zip code is we took out the 23 boundary zip codes along the western border, looked at just the geocoding method on those 23. If it had a good disbursement of citizens, we looked then at the number that were in and the number that were out and adjusted the number for those 23 accordingly.
Okay, so the number in blue is actual in district citizenship.
Right.
But then I heard a concern about somehow including out of state on the eastern border.
We haven't done anything with out of state.
So there shouldn't be any out of state included on this.
There's not.
It's just whether or not, but you couldn't geocode the northeastern corner to determine whether it was in or out.
No, we did that for those also.
But they don't have numbers reflected on them?
The one I handed out was for the western border.
No, you're right. The numbers aren't on there, but they were generated for those.
I can't support a map that's not complete with all the information. If you're going to do it for the west, you should also do it for the east and have an accurate reflection if you're asking us to adopt this as official redistricting information. So I'm happy to consider this, but only if all that information is properly noted, because that motion doesn't include like how that. I don't know what I'm voting on then.
Right.
So. Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Irvin?
Yes, I was not clear on what we was voting on, but I think I figured it out, and I definitely am opposed to the numbers, and I'll be voting against it.
Well, Mr. Garvin? Mr. Hoskin?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With respect to what Councilor Cowan Watts said about a district court decision, I'm unclear on how anything we do here implicates some district court order, or could you speak to that? Or I didn't invite Councilor Cowan Watts to speak to that because I'm not clear on the reference.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to clarify, we sent this for declaratory judgment. And I apologize if I mix up legal terms. But the declaratory judgment came back and stated that it was only proper to use registration data, and David, if I misspeak, or Todd, let me know. So registration data where a citizen declares whether or not they're in district or not and what county they're in. So that would, instead of having this mixed match of geocoding and availability due to 911 addressing in some communities and not in others, we would rely then on the self-declaration where the constituent knew best where they lived. And that would declare, because there's that form when you get your blue card, and we actually attach that, and it shows that a community member declares their community where their physical address exists. Does that answer your question?
It does, but is it your position that any map we adopt has to comport with this declaratory judgment? Because if it does, then we need to spend much time on discussing this map.
I mean, it tells that the courts tell us what the data is that we're supposed to use. So I wasn't for sure why we were having this discussion.
I'm fully admitting that I don't know chapter and verse of the declaratory order. I think it's a bit presumptuous of the district court to dictate what, going forward, we need to use as numbers, Madam Speaker. If they want to review it after the fact and apply the laws that relates to one man, one vote, then they can review us that way. But I don't think we're handcuffed to that declaratory order. But I've deferred to Council Hembry's input on that at some point. On its face, I think that's problematic. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
He has gone back to get the information that is not on this map, which I didn't realize was not. The whole purpose is to choose the absolute best scientific data that is available. And Geodata has come up with 3/4 or more of the counties that have 911 that can pinpoint and say, yes, these people are in, and no, these people are not in. And I think that we would not be doing our duty to try and leave those folks represented by Jack and Julia alone and let them represent the ones that are outside the boundaries. And we should choose the absolute best information that is available, which Todd's group has worked extremely hard on this, and they have turned it upside down and sideways and inside out, and they have finally sat here before us and said this is the absolute best numbers for the citizens of the Cherokee Nation within our boundaries. And we know that we're going to have to accept some in like Wagner County, very few in Mays, a few in McIntosh, well, two zip codes in McIntosh, that they've said, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. And not proportion, not, do anything. But when you've got, we're sitting here talking about 36, about 4,000 people that were given the benefit of the doubt to out of, help me Todd, how many are in here? Out of 100,000, so 5% that and some of that 5% is going to be within the district, and some of it's going to be out. But the fact is, this is the best that we can come up with, and we can beat this thing to death, and we can take 3 or 4 years to come up with it, and we can let the courts decide it, or we can take the absolute best information available that the experts in the Cherokee Nation have said that this is the best we're going to get at this point in time. And I would beg that you discuss a little bit, give Geodata time to put the other numbers on this map, and then let's pass it and get on down the road with coming up with the proper equally divided districts as the Constitution, as Jack quoted a minute ago, says we ought to do. Thank you.
Mr. Buzzard?
Yes, and I think Mr. Baker just addressed it, because I'd like to see the numbers on the northeast portion of this map. David, what you got? This portion right up in here?
That's what he went for.
Okay.
And apparently there's just 2 or 3 zip codes that are even affected.
Right.
And shouldn't take him but just a minute to pull those. So if we don't get in too big a hurry, we can get it and possibly pass this so that we can get it out the rat killer.
Mr. Baker, was that all, Farley?
Yes, that's all.
Mr. Baker, the other one?
Actually, I agree with Mr. Baker's comments there, but I would like to add on the declaratory judgment that was ruled on by the district court. That was appealed to the Supreme Court and it was overturned.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, we have no binding decision.
Decision hot? No, you had your agenda.
So I just got a question. So he's going after which numbers? The eastern?
Yeah, I guess there's three
All of them.
zip codes. Well, yeah, but there's only three that are.
There's 3 zip codes there. Okay. These are
There's-
the ones I didn't get.
Those zip codes would be affected by Ottawa and Delaware County residents. There's a small sliver of Delaware County that would be affected by that.
Delaware doesn't have 911.
Close to Grove, they do. It's kind of like Wagner County. The further west you go in Wagner County, the better 911 data. The closer to Grove you get, the better 911 data you have there in
So, but we took all of Wagner County in here, so we'll take all of Delaware regardless of whether it's close to Grove or not, right? On that zip code?
How many zip codes are you? I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Jody still has the floor.
After that.
Oh, that's it. Just the...
Janelle?
Well, this is difficult, and I wish that we had 911 for everywhere. But I've always questioned in the past, where are these numbers coming from? And I think these numbers are better than proportioning it out to actually see, because just like in Dr. Cobb's district up there, it changed a lot of things. And I just want us to go for the one that we think is the most accurate. That's all I've got to say.
Well, best I can tell from all the information that we've been given, we've got about 111,000 people that we've determined are inside the district. We might have in question, as Bill John said, about 4,000 people, probably a portion of which fall inside the county versus falling outside the area. So it looks like these numbers are accurate within 2 to 3%, give or take. Now, folks, that's probably just about as accurate as we're going to be able to be without every area having 911. And if we don't start with good numbers of membership, then everything we do past that is built on imperfection. So I think the man's done his job. That's what we pay him to do. He's part of this organization. He don't have a dog in this fight. We need to use his work, use his department, and we need to consider this and as Bill John said, get on with our rat killing. Let's vote these numbers in, and then let's go about the business of dividing up this district 15 ways.
Mr. Baker? Another question.
It appears that there's 3 more districts that are involved, and the numbers are there before us. It looks like 74354 has 266 in the district and 2197 out. 74343 has 579 in and only 9 out. And 74344 has 1,870 in and only 177 out. And that being said, there is no mystery to this map. If the numbers are what the numbers are, I agree with Tina that Todd and Mr. Justice don't have a dog in the hunt, and I think that they're giving us the numbers that they can justify, whether it be in court or not. And so I'm going to call for the question to take this map as being the benchmark that we work from, as being the absolute best information to this day that's probably not going to get any better in the next 2 years. Would you all agree with that?
I would.
Okay.
Question being called, however, there are 2 people that want to make a comment, Mr. Hoskin and then Ms. Fitchinghott, and then we'll call the question.
I withdraw, Madam Speaker.
Okay, my question, my comment is to 74344, which is at the top of Delaware County, where they're relying on a 911 system like we did with Wagner. The further you go, the better it gets. Since we included all of Wagner, I feel like to be consistent, we ought to include the other 177 throughout, because we're including all of Wagner for the same reason. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes.
It's the one that's 74344.
I think Jack.
No, I'm clear. I just.
Oh, are you? Well, what do you take your hip then? Mr. Hoskin?
Just to be clear, Councilman Bill John Baker's motion would adopt all of these documents as the basically underlying numbers, including this most recent document that was handed to us. Is that correct?
Baker, you want to restate your motion?
Yeah, the clarification is that we're going to take this map and approve it as the benchmark, and these be the numbers, and this documentation is where the blue numbers came from and the black numbers that I just added to the map. So yes, these two would go together to form the numbers on the map. And for those outlying districts that have been uncertain all these years, we finally have 911 that will take care of that. And, you know, as far as Jody's friendly or whatever, I don't think it's constitutional to accept a single soul that we know is not in the district. I think that's wrong. And so I don't agree with that amendment.
The question's been called, however, Ms. Coates, it's the last question, because the question has been called.
No, it's fine. I had the same concern as Mr. Baker, and I would make the same remark, that's all.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to use this map with supporting documentation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
No.
Roll call, please. Yes, as you support the map.
Janelle Fulbright,
Yes.
Don Garbin,
No.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
Yes.
China Gloria Jordan,
Yes.
Curtis Snell,
Yes.
Chris Soap,
Yes.
David Thornton, Kara Cowan Watts,
No.
Bill England,
Yes.
Bill John Baker,
Yes.
Jack Baker,
Yes.
Harley Buzzard,
Yes.
Julia Coates,
Yes.
Bradley Cobb,
Yes.
Joe Crittenden,
Yes.
Jody Fishinghawk,
Yes.
Meredith Fraley.
Yes.
We have 1, 2, 3.
14 yes and 2 no. The motion carries. Any announcements? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. Good job. Yeah. Yeah, more